But what we'll do, Ems, is because the House is sitting literally as we speak, and Rachel Brooking's been very good to give us some time to have a chat about the RMA and what's been announced today. So we'll go straight to Rachel and then we'll jump on with the rest of the show after we let her get back to metaphorically beating over the head the government with a big stick, metaphorically speaking, of course. So let's welcome to the show Rachel Brooking. Rachel, good evening to you.
Kia ora, lovely to be upstairs. I'm on the third floor. I've come up from the first floor.
Nice. Long time no see. Is that right?
Yeah.
People don't know what that joke is. Thank you for coming on Friday night. It was lovely to see you at the I guess technically it was sort of the New Zealand Nurses Organisation event that we sort of co-hosted, I guess. Before we get into this, any takeaways from the event on Friday night? Hearing Gary Payinda speak, hearing Craig speak. What was your takeaways from it being? You came along as sort of just a viewer, although we did pull you up at one stage.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, what were your thoughts?
It was just such an engaged audience. That's what I came away with, and people are really wanting to talk about elections, even though we're still in 2025. So real mood for change, certainly in our part of the world.
What's the feeling like around the Labour caucus at the moment with those poll results yesterday? Now, we know we don't read too much into the polls until the big day, but the closer you get to the election, the more relevance they have. Last night we said that Labour's doing their job. I mean, for Labour, it seems like that was right about where it was. And if you were to take last night as a part of the trend rather than an outlier, and we won't know until the next poll which one of those it is, the sort of minor parties on the left weren't pulling their weight. What was the Labour feeling about it?
Look, long way to the election. We're working really hard. We do, of course, want to get our numbers up. And we don't want this coalition government to continue.
Yeah.
So, you know, of course, those poll results which show a right-wing government always not what we want to see, but we've just got to work really hard and make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and for the whole last 2 years, Chewy and I have been, we don't really care about seats in the House yet. That really gets decided on election day. But it's inarguable that you watch the trends and that the closer you get to the election, the more valuable polls can be. And I guess the last one going into the holiday break is sort of the first one that I think people can start to look at to see where we are all at. Also quite interesting, I know this is not what we said we were going to talk about, but quite interesting to see Chippy be quite aggressive, not in a bad way, but today about we want those Māori seats. I mean, it sounds like basically what he's saying is in an ideal world for Labour, there would be no Te Pāti Māori. Would that be fair to say?
Well, we certainly want to win the seats, and we've got an awesome Māori caucus and we'll have great candidates as well. So we've got of course, we're backing them.
Let's have a look. We won't do the whole story because you are a little bit limited on time. We don't want to hold you up for too long. But what we will do is the Prime Minister about an hour, well, not the Prime Minister, one of his 7 underling people who run his social medias have put something up on his Twitter feed or X feed, however people want to reference it. And I thought that gives kind of a 45-second synopsis of what National says they've done with the RMA today. So let's have a listen to this and then we'd love to get your thoughts.
For 30 years, the Resource Management Act has been a handbrake on growth and opportunity. Today, we're unveiling the next major step in our economic plan to build our future, replacing the broken RMA with a new pro-growth planning system. The reforms that we're announcing today are a once-in-a-generation opportunity to finally unburden ourselves from the millstone weighing down our economy. We are proposing a more permissive, consistent and predictable system that unlocks investment, reduces delays and gives businesses confidence to plan and to grow. There will be less talking and filling in forms and more building and more growing. Less no and a lot more yes. For 30 years.
And I guess a lot of people would say, me included, that on the surface level, that sounds great. The devil is always in the detail. When, for example, you read slashing red and green tape, and by green tape, I'm assuming he's saying all that environmental stuff that they force us to look after. But then we also do hear stories about people taking months to get permission to, cut a tree or to move a tree within their system. So where are we at today with the RMA? I know that Chippy said on the news tonight that Labor was going to take some time to sort of dig a bit deeper into it before you come up with a final statement. But what are the initial thoughts around what's been done?
Well, two initial thoughts on what the Prime Minister was just saying there. One is, of course, it's not a once in a generation time to overhaul the RMA, because we did it when we were in government. We had a huge piece of work with the Spatial Planning Act and a Natural and Built Environments Act that this government then repealed 2 years ago, almost to the day. So, and they brought back the RMA with that repeal. So that's wrong. And he keeps saying this, and perhaps he wasn't around the house very much in 2023, but that's annoying. And secondly, in his statement then, he didn't mention the environment at all. There was nothing about improving the environment. So in all of Labor's, all of our reforms that we did last term, they were based on two things. One was improving the environment, and the other was improving efficiencies, because the RMA really has a whole lot of inefficiencies. It's grown up and been amended and had all this case law come into it over time. So it is difficult, and it does need to change, and which is why we repealed it. And so now the national government has said, announced today what it's been signalling for a long time, and that is that they'll separate out our integrated resource management system, and to have one that's a planning act and one that's more of a environmental act. So the type of things that regional councils do, air and water, those sorts of things, biodiversity, that'll be in the Environment Act, and things that like city councils do, so land use controls and urban planning, that'll be in the Planning Act. But they've also said a whole lot of other things that we did in our reforms as well. So they're talking about the importance of spatial planning. We did that. Having one big sort of planning document at the regional scale. We did that as well. Having clear environmental bottom lines. We were doing that as well. So there's a big range of issues that are very similar. Where the differences are is they've got a very big focus on the enjoyment of private property rights, and you'll hear all of them talk about this, and the regulatory takings aspect of the bill we're very concerned about, and haven't got into the detail yet about exactly the wording in the bills, but we are interested in hearing submissions on this issue. So, because the issue is, if a council puts some sort of environmental protection on your land, and there's a threshold there, I think it's something like significant. If they do that, then the private property owner can require some sort of compensation from the council for that. And that's what we're talking about, regulatory takings. And that could, of course, mean like councils don't like, ratepayers don't like councils spending more money to have environmental protections. So probably that could result in there being just a real reduction in environmental protections. That's the concern.
You also mentioned there, when I said devil in the detail, the role that regional councils play whilst this government is trying to get rid of regional councils. So that's obviously going to have to look at a new aspect as to how all those checks and balances line up.
Yeah, and look, that document on the regional councils is very brief and doesn't make a huge lot of sense, because it is saying that regional councils are still there. It's just the regional councillors aren't there, and that maybe the mayors do the role of the regional councillors. So it's quite, it seemed very undeveloped, that paper, when it came out a couple of weeks ago. And however, we do know that a lot in the government, many people in the government do not like the job that regional councils have been doing when regional councils have been implementing the water protections that Labor put in place. And so we saw the Otago Regional Council, the day before they were going to notify their plan, that would have provided for these different plan settings to stop rivers being polluted, and the whole idea being that they'd be swimmable again at some point. This government stopped that council doing it the day before. So there's this real record of not wanting regional councils to do their job of protecting our environment and in fact improving the environment as well. So that's all piece of the puzzle. And why I'm running around in the House at the moment is because in addition to the two bills that were well signalled, we've been talking about them for a long time, was all well signalled, of course, devil's in the detail, but they've also put in an all stages urgency bill, which is giving resource consents that would expire before the 31st of December 2027 an extension to the 31st of December 2027. And there's just no analysis with this. There's no regulatory impact statement. The departmental discussion documents that are just totally light, and it's all stages urgency. So we don't know how many consents we're talking about and what the impacts will be of those consents getting an extension. It might be that most of them will be totally benign and it won't really matter if they're extended for another 2 years. But it might be that it's for a resource that is contested, how much pollution is going into a river, for instance. I mean, if you keep that going for another 2 years, that there will be real consequences. But I'm totally talking in the hypothetical because there's just been no analysis provided.
Yeah. Emily, you got any thoughts you want to jump in with?
Well, I was thinking about how this, the Regulatory Standards Act now, no longer the RSB, but the RSA, will have an effect on this. But it sounds to me like it's already having an effect with this whole, property rights. Because I know that the being paid out by councils for land use or land changes or whatever, that was part of, or one of the things that people were concerned about with the, one of the things that Seymour wanted because through the Regulatory Standards Act. So, any thoughts on how much this is starting to impact that already, or the RMA changes? Yeah,
they go hand in hand, right? So this real focus on private property rights, that's something that's been in the Act manifesto and whenever they've talked about the RMA for a long time. So yes, that is consistent libertarian thinking. And ironically though, the bill that's going through under all stages urgency at the moment, that of course doesn't meet any of those tests. In terms of the good legislation making. It's a fail.
Yes, and that's one that Tanya Waikato, I think we've talked to her a few times. She's pointed that out many times, is that like this under urgency stuff has never had good policy making as part of it because they just sort of regulatory impact statements. Nah, we don't need those. So it's not going to take very long until the Regulatory Standards Act is not really doing what it says it was going to do.
It's such a terrible way to make law all stages urgency. Sorry, I know I'm deviating away from the RMA here a bit, but they what it means is we're sitting in Parliament and often we don't see the bill, and today we saw it an hour earlier, but we didn't see the departmental disclosure documents or anything else until the minister stands up and starts speaking about it. And then you literally run to the table in the House, get the document, sit there, and as soon as he sits down, I stand up and start talking about the thing. And then you go through the second reading, and then you go through the committee of the whole stage where you get to ask the minister questions. Meanwhile, the government members are trying to shut down the questions all of the time. And then you go to a third reading and then the bill's done. And so if you went to a select committee, I could be on the select committee and I could ask officials quite technical, detailed questions about the wording of the bill. And of course, people can submit on it as well. And whilst some submissions are all in opposition or all in favour of something, many submissions are really helpful. Just, if this is what you wanted to do policy-wise, you would achieve it better if you did A, B, and C. And it makes much, much better law.
Yeah.
Just to take a half step back, there was a time today where there was, in the House, where there was an undisclosed bill. Is that what you're talking about? You don't know what... So I just want to unpack this because this sounds like the antithesis of democracy. that the government has prepared a bill. It's undisclosed. The opposition literally doesn't know what it's going to be. Did you just say until an hour before then, or as the minister was standing up? And then you have to respond to it in the House immediately. I mean, not just because I typically would lean towards where the opposition parties would be right now, but that just seems to be an incredibly bully pulpit, undemocratic way to pass anything.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a terrible way to do things. And what it really annoys me about it is that this government will go, oh, well, other governments have used urgency too. But how many bills have been through all stages urgency by other governments and not on notice?
Well, and for what? What are they putting them? I mean, so the Christchurch earthquake happens or COVID happens. There's a reason for urgency.
That's right.
Yeah,
and there is an actual. Yeah, I should have added. Is there an actual emergency, or is there something? We had some space legislation that went through all stages urgency, which we were okay with, but we because of national security issues. But we wanted a post-enactment review clause so that people, when they've got more time, the bill needed to be passed quickly for a good, proper reason, but then people have some time to go over it and see if it needs to be amended at all or if something else should happen with it.
So are we sitting here this evening, still really not knowing what the sum total of these RMA changes are because it needs to be dug into and we need to figure it out? Like, do you look at it and go, I see the good things they've done here, this is all bad? How's your reaction to that?
Yeah, so there are lots of things that have really come across from our legislation in terms of better compliance, monitoring and enforcement. Those things are good. We are both, our reforms and their reforms are trying to change the GDP in the system away from consent by consent up into the plans and the national policy direction. Those things are good, but the concerns here are about that regulatory taking, the role of mana whenua, and I haven't gone through all of that yet, but it's likely to be very reduced. We had in our reforms that mana whenua would be at the table, not just being consulted with, but at the table, and this will be much diminished. And this government talks about treaty settlements all the time, but we've got that whole bit of the north where there are no settlements and places, or they're not settled, and we've got other places around the country, so we have to think beyond that. I'm not sure how strong that will be. I think it will be weaker. No interest in looking at climate mitigation, reducing climate pollution. I don't think there will be much or anything on green spaces. So if you're intensifying places like Auckland, which is a good thing to do, but if you're letting people do everything that they can on their private property, there are going to be impacts on our stormwater, and there is a need for green areas, and climate change, the place is heading up, and there's more storms and weather events, and people need recreational spaces as well if they're living in denser environments. So who is it that's going to provide for those green spaces when councils are having rate caps put on them? What are the financial mechanisms going to be? So those are the things that I'm particularly interested in, as well as the role of community participation in the process and how often they'll get knocked out in the way that they've been knocked out of the fast track.
Rachel, thank you for joining us tonight. Before we go, Ems, do you have any other questions or comments to wrap up with?
No. I think you've got a very important job to go and do, so we won't keep you for too much longer. But
not like us.
Yeah, not like us.
Not like us. Hey, Rachel, is this your last week in the house? Are you back home to Dunedin next week as well?
Yeah, next week. Hopefully we'll end on the Wednesday night next week.
Okay, and then back to Dunedin for summer?
Definitely Christmas and New Year's.
Yep, excellent. We'll see you at the Octagon.
Excellent. Lovely.
All right, thanks for your time, Rachel. All the best.
Thank you.